You are watching Notepad. I have with me Wipro Unza talking about their business and of course the consumer market at large. 2020 is of course going to be a very tough year. Plenty of things that have happened so far, and we're only into week 6 or week 7 of the year, and the world has seen such an interesting development thus far. I don't know whether the rest of the year is going to be as tumultuous as this, but if the first 6 weeks is any indication, this is going to be a really interesting year for us, for everyone.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge so far right now in front of us is of course the coronavirus or the I don't know what it's called now,
NCOV.
NCOV-19, their official name as well. WHO just announced it. People are now not going into public places. Just outside of our studio, there are people taking temperatures at Bursa Malaysia. This is a common sight everywhere now. Is this going to push consumer sentiment, I guess, to a poorer state?
There are both positive triggers and negative triggers at the demand side. I would say some of the positive triggers are that people are more interested in hygiene, therefore the antibacterial wash-off products, the sanitizers and masks kind of categories are seeing a lot of interest. It's a great time if you're a mask manufacturer. So demand has its upsides. At the same time, people are traveling less to non-essential shopping, and there are those risks. But one factor contracting the other, we are less worried about the demand side. What we are more concerned about at this point is the supply side, where practically every company in the world today has a supply chain that goes back to China in some way, and packing materials, components of packaging, even some raw materials and so on coming from there. So the situation there will have a direct impact on the supply side, more than what we've seen on the demand side till now.
Are you alluding to some of the problems that your company is going through right now, supply chain in China?
We anticipate, because as of now we covered for the next month and a half. But
that's not long for
that's
your
not
business.
long. But before that, things have to turn around in China for the supplies to continue on a regular basis.
So at a company level, are you guys optimistic, pessimistic? What's the story?
We are, as many people at this stage, we are living in hope at this point that things will correct themselves in a few weeks' time, or if we are covering ourselves from other fronts where, for example, some of our packaging pumps for shower and shampoo, they come from China. So we are trying to see if there are alternative suppliers in Vietnam, in Thailand and so on, Indonesia, to see if we can cover through them rather than relying on just one supplier.
So see, this is the whole idea of diversifying your supply side.
That's right.
And a lot of companies, I wouldn't say get complacent, but because the fact that they are comfortable with China, and China is a big country, it's not, it's a mini continent, to be frank.
That's right.
And so people think that it's diversified enough. This particular event shows that it's not diversified enough. The whole country is getting clamped down.
Yep, and there are linkages. One, you could call it diversification, but your factory could be somewhere else in China, but you still probably draw a certain level of manpower from the affected provinces, and therefore your attendance at the factories, even after China has resumed work, you will still find that many of our suppliers don't have full attendance, and even if they have attendance, they need to quarantine them for 15-14 days before they can actually work in the factory. Okay. So there are factors like this which create a short-term disturbance. As long as it remains in the short term, it's still okay.
But it's still a concern to be thinking about.
Still a concern.
Okay, because of the fact that you guys operate in a few countries, all of them have different, I guess, risk allocation towards things coming in from China.
Yep.
How do you manage that differences in terms of regulatory requirements between one country to another?
At a material level, raw materials and packing materials is a relatively unrestricted category of, there might be import duties in various markets, but apart from the commercial aspect of duties, there is nothing like a prohibition or banning of a certain material from one market to another, as long as you're not getting chemicals that are of a banned nature. So that's a qualifier. So we don't, so it's essentially a commercial calculation of where best to source your materials from. So what is the price at the source? What is the import structure, import duty structure, and therefore what makes sense for you as a business in Malaysia to source from. So that's essentially the decision. And if all your eggs are in one basket in terms of one supplier for one material, then it makes you inherently more risky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it could bring costs down, I suppose.
It could. It could. So it's a choice between going aggressively for cost management or diversification of risk in this kind of a scenario.
What would you choose on a personal level?
I think 2 is better than 1 for every material.
Even if it could cost
even
more.
if there is no coronavirus or not, never mind. So if all your eggs are in one basket, even from a bargaining power perspective, the supplier knows that you are dependent on that one supplier. So it's good to have more than one supplier for every material as a manufacturer.
Of course, the disruption into the retail industry is happening really fast. AWS, which is coming on this show very soon, is of course disrupting the tech sector and the retail sector. Amazon is of course big in the US, in Malaysia. Online shopping is a big deal. How are you diversifying your distribution channels right now?
Well, some of our customers are themselves leading in this space. For example, retailers like Tesco and Watsons are quite active on the e-commerce platforms. Plus, we are also directly listing our products on the e-commerce platform, Lazada, Shopee, the works. There are more than 8 or 10 that's significant at this point. So this is a habit that's going to grow. Malaysia is a bit of the lagging the Southeast Asia average at this point.
In terms of delivery?
In terms of the share of e-commerce in the overall business.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah. Other markets have been far ahead. China in particular has been significantly ahead of the rest of the market. But Malaysia has been a bit of a slow burn for e-commerce.
Do you know why? I got one theory. I don't know whether it's true. Is the last mile issue where people have a problem in terms of delivery itself? Not so much the behavior of trying to get the shopping cart online done and dusted.
I doubt if that is the case, because there are other categories like mobile phones or other categories, electronics for example, it's taken off. It's just that in consumer space, it's a bit lagging compared to other markets. So it could be because trade in general, hypermarkets, supermarkets, pharmacies, is very well developed in Malaysia, and shopping is a national pastime. So you don't want to compromise that.
Yes, of course. Plus also an interesting thing to do, right, over the weekend. All right, that was my conversation with Wipro Unza CEO, Mr. Sriram. If you've missed any part of this interview, just head on to astro.com, look for Notepad over there. You can also watch this interview on mobile devices. Just download this particular app, Astro AWANI app, and watch the interviews there. We're also on podcasts. Search for Astro AWANI wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, thanks very much for watching, and goodbye. All right, that was good.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.